The stars were silent for a long time. But one day, deep in the black void between galaxies, a signal moved through space. Weak, broken, full of static, but still clear enough to understand Dot. It was a call for help, that the message came from a small planet in Sector 9, far beyond the main Galactic Council routes. The aliens living there, small, peaceful beings, were not soldiers. They were scholars, farmers, engineers. Their world had been attacked by a violent empire called the Krar Dominion. Their cities were burning. Their defenses were already broken. The message was desperate. "Please," the voice said, "to any who hear this, we cannot fight them. We are dying. We beg for help. Anyone, please." The signal repeated over and over, echoing across the stars. On Earth, far away from the chaos, the message reached a quiet satellite station orbiting the moon. The computers flagged it. An operator noticed. She froze when she read the code. It was old, but still known. It was the kind of signal that hadn't been heard in over 50 years. She didn't call a meeting. She didn't ask permission. She pressed a single button. Far beneath Earth's surface, in a secret command facility hidden under the Arctic ice, red lights began to flash. A voice came over the speakers. "Emergency signal detected. Protocol black flame. Level 1 response authorized." General Holt stepped into the room. His uniform was black. His face was calm, but his eyes showed experience. Too many battles, too many decisions that couldn't be undone. "What do we have?" he asked. The officer at the screen turned. "A distress call, sir. Civilian origin. Unknown species." It came from the edge of Krar Dominion space. "Krar?" Holt's tone sharpened. "Still expanding?" "Yes, sir." "This planet isn't part of the Council. They have no allies. They sent the call into open space. No one's going to answer." The general stood still for a moment. "No one. Except us," he said quietly. The Galactic Council had once banned Earth from responding to calls like this. Humans were too aggressive, they said. Too unpredictable. Too dangerous. Earth agreed. That's why they built the Ghost Fleet. No names. No flags. No broadcasts. Only missions. And one of those fleets was still alive, waiting, just outside the galactic rim, hidden in the dark. General Holt gave the order. "Wake Fleet 9. Captain Rana stood on the bridge of the dreadnought. Iron Soul. The ship hadn't moved in 20 years. Dust covered the walls. The crew had been in deep sleep, frozen in silence, in dreams, waiting. Now, lights turned on. Engines roared. Weapon systems hummed to life. The crew woke with cold eyes and quiet breath. These were not normal humans. These were soldiers bred on Earth's worst death worlds, born in fire, trained in storms, built to fight wars a galaxy feared to remember. Reyna looked at the map lighting up in front of her. One blinking red dot marked the source of the distress call. "Set course," she said. "We're answering." "But Captain," one officer asked, "we don't even know who they are." Reyna's voice was calm. "They called. That's enough." Back on the alien world, things were getting worse. Fires burned across the sky. The Krar Dominion moved like shadows, giant ships raining destruction. The aliens had lost hope. Their leader, an elder named Varric, stood on a rooftop watching the smoke rise. "No one's coming," he whispered. Suddenly, the sky flashed white. It wasn't lightning. It wasn't fire. It was something new. Far above the world, in cold space, thousands of ships slipped through the black. No sound, no signal. Just steel. The war fleet of Earth had arrived. They didn't send a message. They didn't ask permission. They came with silence and weapons, and they were already locking targets. Asterisk, while the alien world below shook under enemy fire, the human warfleet watched from orbit, silent and unseen, thousands of Earth-built. Warships floated like ghosts in the black sky. No flags, no colors, no names. Just numbers burned into metal and weapons ready to fire. Inside the command ship Iron Soul, Captain Reyna stood tall on the bridge. Her eyes scanned the enemy formations on the screen Krar Dominion warships, armored and aggressive, circling the helpless planet below like hungry wolves. "They're feeding on the weak," her second officer muttered. Reyna didn't blink. "And they think we're still sleeping." No one on the bridge spoke loudly. No one celebrated. This wasn't a mission for honor. This was a mission for message. And humanity had sent watchers, warriors hidden in shadows, ready to strike without warning. Back on Earth, inside the Arctic. Command facility. General Holt watched the scene unfold through a secure feed. A dozen officers stood silently behind him. The room was dark. Only the cold blue light from the giant holographic display touched their faces. "Are we sure they still don't know we're there?" Holt asked. "Confirmed, sir," replied a tech. "Fleet 9 is running black. No signals, no energy spikes, full cloak. They're invisible." The general nodded slowly. "We didn't come for diplomacy," he said. "We came to end something." On the alien world, the Krar Dominion's lead commander stood on his warship's deck. His species was known for cruelty. Tall, armored, insect-like cold and efficient. "Continue the purge," he hissed to his officers. "Eliminate all survivors." They had done this to 100 planets before. No resistance had ever risen. No help had ever come. But then, their sensors picked up a ripple. Not energy. Not a ship's signature. Something else. "Sir," an officer growled, "there's a shadow behind the moons." The commander turned Dot, and that's when the sky began to change. Dot in space. Above the burning world, Captain Reyna gave the order. "Drop cloak. Let them see us." With a soft hum, one by one, thousands of human warships revealed themselves. Like a curtain falling after a long silence, their presence crashed into the battlefield. Every screen on every Krar ship lit up with warnings. Alarms. Screamed. Dot was too late. They were surrounded. Reyna didn't give a long speech. She didn't ask for surrender. She simply pointed to the screen. "Target priority. Krar command ships." "Locked," replied weapons control. "Fire." Beams of white light cut through space like lightning. No delay, no hesitation. The Krar ships exploded one after another, like matchsticks in a storm. Their formations broke within seconds. "There." Commanders shouted orders, but it didn't matter. The war fleet of Earth had studied them for years, waiting for the perfect strike. Now it was here. Dot, and nothing would survive. On the surface, the aliens who had sent the distress signal looked up. Their skies were burning, but now with different light. The red flames of the Krar ships were being swallowed by brilliant white flashes from orbit. Explosions rained down like falling stars. Old Varric stood frozen, his eyes wide. Around him, children pointed to the heavens. "They came," one whispered. "No," Varric said slowly. "They're not just here. They've been watching." Back on Earth, Holt watched the destruction calmly. "Send one message to the Council." He ordered. Just 3 words. A young officer nodded. "What are the words, sir?" Holt's eyes narrowed. "We answered it." Peace returned, but it didn't feel like peace. Not really. The cities on the alien world were rebuilt with perfect precision. Every street was clean. Every tower stood tall. Machines hummed quietly in the sky, never sleeping. Drones moved in. Steady paths. No enemy would ever touch this world again. There was no hunger. No crime. No war. But there was something else now. 2. Silence. The kind of silence that didn't comfort. The kind that watched. Elder Varric walked through the central plaza, where statues of old leaders once stood. They were gone now. In their place was a new monument. A human hand open, not clenched reaching down from metal dot at its base, only 3 words. Earth remembers everything. Commander Lorne stood nearby, arms crossed as he watched a group of alien children playing under the monument's shadow. They laughed. They smiled. To them, this world was normal now. They hadn't known life before Earth. An alien teacher approached Lorne. "We never got to say thank you," she said softly. Lorne looked at her for a long moment. Would it have changed anything? He asked. The teacher didn't answer. In the deep void of space, Earth's warfleet moved again, not toward conquest, not toward colonies. Just motion. Watching, listening, every distress signal, every whisper, every flicker of trouble was tracked. But Earth no longer sent ambassadors. It sent silence. And if the silence wasn't enough, it sent ships. The Galactic Council gathered in emergency session. They had lost control. No one had declared Earth a ruler. No treaties were signed. But the galaxy had already chosen. Planets no longer sent requests to the Council. They sent them to Earth's machines. Earth didn't respond with words. It responded with presence, with order, with fear. Captain Reyna stood once more on the bridge of the Iron Soul. She watched the empty space ahead. Another world had just sent a message. Pirates, they claimed. A threat to their moons. The message didn't beg. It simply asked, "Will Earth come again?" Reyna nodded. "We will." Back on the first world, the one that had begged for help and started it all, Elder Varric gave one final speech. He stood before his people. His voice was older, weaker now. "We cried into the stars," he said, and a giant answered. His eyes turned to the human flag that now stood beside their own. "We asked for help. They gave us safety. But we did not understand what help meant." He paused. "We are safe, but not free." That night, as the stars shimmered above the world once saved, Commander Lorne prepared to leave. His mission was complete. The shuttle's engines hummed quietly as he looked one last time at the place Earth had claimed not by force, but by presence. By answering when others stayed silent. A child ran to him before he boarded. "Will you come back?" she asked. Lorne crouched down. His reply was quiet. "Only if you call." He smiled, then added just before the doors closed, "But next time, choose your words carefully." He stood alone in the dust, the human, not wearing armor, not surrounded by guards, just calm, still, and watching. Around him, the silence was heavy. Dozens of aliens peeked from broken windows, from ruined streets, from shelters carved into fallen buildings. They expected soldiers. They got a man. His name was Commander Lorne, though no one here knew it yet. He had stepped out of the shuttle with only a datapad and a black badge on his chest. It wasn't a symbol of peace. It was a warning. The symbol of Earth's black protocol used only when force had already been used and something more was coming. "Elder." Varric approached slowly, using a broken staff to keep his balance. Behind him, a small crowd gathered, unsure if they should stay hidden or step forward. "You answered our call," Varric said, his voice dry. Lorne looked at him, quiet for a moment, then nodded once. Varric's eyes searched the human's face. "Why? You did not know us. You owed us nothing." The human replied simply, "We heard." "You." In orbit, the ghost fleet remained in position, silent, unmoving, massive shadows above the world. On the bridge of the Iron Soul, Captain Reyna sat in her chair, arms crossed. "We saved them," her officer said. "No," she replied. "We removed a threat." "That's not the same thing," the officer frowned. "You don't think they're grateful?" Reyna didn't answer, because she knew the truth. Gratitude was a weak bond. Fear lasted longer. Back on the surface, Varric asked the question that had haunted his people since the first Krar ship fell. Will you stay? Lorne didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked around, the broken statues, the dead fires, the children too afraid to cry. You asked for help, he said. You didn't ask what it would cost. Varric's face changed. What does it cost? He whispered. Lorne looked him in the eyes. Everything. At that moment, thousands of drones fell from orbit, small, silent machines no larger than a bird. They didn't shoot. They didn't scan. They built. Structures rose fast. Walls, towers, defense systems. Human designs strong, sharp, perfect. Alien City, once full of soft shapes and natural curves, was now being changed. Stone became steel. Paths became control grids, and none of the locals could stop it. In their homes. Aliens whispered. They saved us. But they never asked, is this protection or occupation? Are we free or owned? No one had an answer, not even Varric. Night came. The stars above were still blocked by the human fleet. Commander Lorne sat alone in a room that used to be a school. The chalkboards were still covered in notes from a class that would never finish. A young alien girl stood at the door. She held something in her hand, a simple flower made from colored thread. She stepped forward and held it out to him. This is for saving us, she said. Lorne looked at the gift for a long moment, then took it gently. Thank you. The girl smiled and ran back into the shadows. Lorne placed the thread flower beside his weapon. On the Iron Soul, Reyna watched the surface. Her second-in-command asked, why do we always send one person down? She replied, because humanity doesn't show its full hand. But what if they resist later? Reyna's voice was cold. They won't. At sunrise, Lorne stood once again before the crowd. He spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. Your world is now under Earth's protection. There will be food, water, safety, no more threats. He paused. But we don't offer peace. We offer order. And in the silence that followed, everyone understood. Mercy was never promised. Asterisk news spreads fast in a connected galaxy, but fear spreads faster. The Krar Dominion, a power feared for centuries, was gone in less than a day. Their warships were dust, their leaders silent, and their enemies, the ones who cried out, were now under Earth's shadow. Across 100 worlds, leaders sat in silent meetings, watching the same footage. Earth's warfleet didn't land. With flags. It landed with fire. In the Galactic Council chambers. The air was thick with tension. A dozen species sat in their high chairs, tall and proud just days ago. Now, their eyes kept flicking to the black screen at the center of the hall. It showed a human warship, huge, dark, without markings, hovering over the alien planet like a god. They said Earth was dormant. One ambassador whispered. They were, another replied, until someone called their name. The council leader, old and slow to speak, leaned forward. His voice shook. They didn't answer a diplomatic message. They responded to a scream. And that, more than anything, terrified them. On the alien planet below, the survivors were trying to return to life. But the world they woke to was no longer theirs. The streets were cleaner. The buildings stood taller. There was no hunger, no crime, no danger. But there was also no freedom. The food came from sealed crates marked with Earth's crest. The air patrol's silent drones floated over rooftops that the people had safety. But they walked quietly, heads low. As if they feared waking something. Elder Varric walked through the rebuilt plaza. Children played under the new towers, their laughter softer than before. A merchant whispered to him, "We should be thankful." Varric nodded slowly. "Yes, but we must also remember." "Remember what?" Varric looked up at the sky where Earth ships still hovered. "That we were heard. Commander Lorne sat alone inside a repurposed alien hall, now Earth's surface command post. He watched messages coming in from across space, that other planets were starting to send requests, not to the Council, not to Earth. Some begged for help, others offered alliances. One message simply said, "How much do we need to give for your protection?" Lorne didn't smile. He typed only 2 words in reply. "You decide." In deep space, far from any known system, Earth's high command gathered in silence. Not in person, but through linked minds, artificial and real. General Holt was there. So was Reyna, and others ones who never showed their faces. One voice echoed in the chamber. "Do we continue?" Reyna answered. "They asked for help." Another voice said, "But we didn't save them." Holt leaned forward. "No," he said. "We made them part of us." In the Galactic Council, panic turned to planning. We need new weapons. We need alliances. We need to stop them before they act again. But someone in the corner of the room asked a quieter question. Stop them? The voice was calm, chilling. How do you stop someone who only acts when called? Back. On the alien planet, a monument was built overnight. Not by the locals, by Earth. It stood tall, made of black alloy, impossible to scratch or scan. At the base, only one sentence was carved in dozens of languages. You were heard. Be careful what you ask next. That night, Elder Varric looked at the stars. They were beautiful again, but he no longer felt comfort looking up, because somewhere in that endless sky, humanity waited. And Earth had made one thing very clear. Listens. Asterisk. Above the burning skies, space had turned into a graveyard. The Krar Dominion's warships, once proud and untouchable, now floated, broken and burning. Metal hulls cracked open, engines spilled fire, and command signals went silent one by one. But this was not the full fleet, not yet. Captain Reyna stood still at the command of the Iron Soul, her arms crossed behind her back. "This isn't over," she said softly. A younger officer looked at the screen. "The rest of the Krar fleet is gathering in deep orbit. Reinforcements, thousands of ships." Reyna nodded. "They thought we brought everything already." She turned to her comms officer. "Call them." The officer swallowed hard. "You mean yes," Reyna said. "Wake the Ghost Fleet." Far across the void, hidden in the folds of deep space, the Ghost Fleet waited. These were not ordinary warships. These were humanity's black flag vessel ships without crew, powered by AI, sealed away for centuries. Each one had a name. Carved into its steel hull names of battles Earth was never supposed to fight again. They had no colors, no mercy. And now they began to move. General Holt stood at his post on Earth, eyes fixed on the long-range display. A new layer of signals had just appeared. Entire sectors were lighting up as power signatures came online one by one. His aides stared in silence. "Is that real?" One whispered. Holt didn't smile. "That's not a fleet," he paused. "That's a memory." On the alien world below, survivors huddled in shelters and craters. Children cried. Families whispered prayers to stars. They didn't understand what was happening above them, only that death had paused. The sound of Kra weapons had faded. The skies were strangely quiet. And then they heard it. A low thunder. At first, it felt like an earthquake. But when they looked up, they saw a crack in the sky. Hundreds more warships, sleek and cold, dropping through space like falling knives. They had no signals. No lights. No names. Just motion perfect, silent, terrifying. And with them came destruction. In orbit, Reyna stared at the battlefield. The Ghost Fleet was here now. She didn't give orders anymore. The ships didn't need them. They had one mission in their code: eliminate any threat near a civilian distress call. And that's what they did. The Krar reinforcements arrived too late. Their captains screamed orders. Their generals swore vengeance. But they couldn't even fire before the first wave of ghost ships cut through them like wire through silk. The AI didn't hesitate. There were no negotiations. There was no offer to surrender. Only silence. And then impact. On the Krarr command vessel, the last surviving admiral stood frozen in fear. His claws trembled as he stared at the final image on his screen. A human warship larger than cities staring back at him. A cold message appeared across his display, written in simple galactic trade language. You hurt the helpless. We were listening. Now we answer. And then his ship turned to fire. Down below, Varric watched as the Krarr ships began to fall one after another. The children around him were no longer crying. They were quiet. Afraid. Because the ones who saved them were even more terrifying than the ones who attacked. Varric whispered to no one. What kind of beings destroy so easily just because they were asked? He didn't know if they had been saved or conquered. Asterisk, the sky was supposed to be blue. That's what it had always been. But today, it was torn apart, split in half by something the alien people had no words for. Their cities were shattered, their skies cracked. The invaders had brought death. But now something far greater had come. Above the planet, light rained down, not sunlight, not fire. It was cold light, controlled, calculated. It moved in long, perfect beams, slicing through Krarr warships like they were made of paper. And then the thunder. A deep rolling sound echoed from the upper atmosphere. But it wasn't thunder. It was the sound of metal breaking, gravity shaking. And war-waking. Old Varric stood atop the ruins of the council dome, robes torn, his breathing shallow. He had seen many things in his life. Famine, fire, loss, but never this. He whispered as he looked at the sky. It's not war. It's a message. Inside the Krarr Dominion's last battleship, panic spread like fire. Their sensors were blind. Communications had gone dark. Their fleet formations destroyed. Their enemy? Silent, ghost-like, unstoppable. General Ragzan, the last Krarr commander, stared at the burning remains of his fleet on the main screen. His mandibles twitched. This can't be Earth's doing. They were exiled, weak, broken. But behind him, an officer replied, voice trembling. That is not weakness. The screen blinked. A new shape appeared. It wasn't a ship. It was a shadow. Black, vast, and alive, descending through space like a blade coming down. The Krarr screamed, but no one could hear them anymore. High above the planet, aboard the human dreadnought Iron Soul, Captain Reyna stared through the reinforced glass. She didn't speak. She didn't smile. She only watched. Enemy resistance has collapsed, her officer said. We've destroyed over 90% of their fleet. And the rest? Reyna asked. Running. Let them, she said calmly. We're not chasing. They'll tell others. She nodded. I want them to. The ghost fleet remained silent. Even in victory, it made no sound. It hovered, still and dark, above the dead remains of Krarr vessels, their wreckage floating like broken bones in orbit. From the ground, survivors stared at the sky with wide, fearful eyes. They had begged for help, and help had come. But the help looked nothing like the stories. There were no kind voices, no gentle healers, no speeches of peace. Just power, just destruction, just war. In a broken classroom, a young alien child pointed up through a hole in the roof. Is that them? She asked. Are those the humans? Her mother, holding her close, said softly, They are. Are they the good ones? The child asked. The mother looked at the ships, still glowing above. I don't know, she answered truthfully. One small shuttle detached from the Iron Soul and began to descend through the atmosphere. It carried no weapons, no guards, only one human inside. Captain Rana watched it go. He's going alone? Asked her second in command. Rana nodded. He volunteered. What should we tell the locals he is? She thought for a moment, then said, Tell them he's a question. The shuttle touched down in silence near the ruins of the alien capital. Dust and ash blew across the field. The ramp lowered Dot, and one man stepped out. He wore a simple suit, no armor, no weapons in his hands. Only a glowing symbol on his chest, one that hadn't been seen in this galaxy in decades. The symbol of Earth. He looked around, saw the ruins, the smoke, the fear in the eyes of the alien people watching from behind rubble. Then he spoke just 4 words, not loud, but clear. You are not alone, asterisk.